Top story this week. America vomits its own soul out into a bottomless chasm of despair. Sorry, America goes to the polls to vote in its presidential election. Now, I've actually enjoyed this election campaign a lot more than I thought I was going to. And by enjoy, I mean ignore, because I've spent the last month, as you may know, Buglers, in Pakistan, in the loving embrace of cricket. Also, I've just started my stand-up tour, so I've been concentrating on that. And I had lots of cricket in the weeks before that, in the English cricket season. And to be honest, it has made this election campaign far more bearable. How have you both dealt with it? This, I guess in 2016 there was a certain, novelty to it, and I guess I don't know. There's almost like a dull thud of reality about Trump still being even a candidate. How have you managed to cope with it?
The dull thud of reality was your special move when you were a wrestler, wasn't it, Zaltzman?
It was just, you've got to get it just high enough above the anyway.
Sorry, Alice.
The nature of this election is so urgent and upsetting. It's a battle for the soul and identity of America. If one party wins, it'll be straight up repressive, patriarchal, Christo-fascism, four-square families with 15 children apiece populating rural compounds in the end of nowhere. If the other party wins, it'll be the absolute disintegration of social traditions, miserable, overemployed, barren women, gay minorities, transitioning minors, bleeding-hearted leftists demanding your hard-earned tax dollars be poured into wasteful, half-baked programs to teach refugees knitting or critical race theory while your grandma can't get a job. It's so incredibly important and vital, and I feel like my careometer got tapped out about 3.5 years ago, maybe. Like, everything is so fucking urgent and in your face and depressing all the time. I think I'm done. I think
it's just you resigning as from the human race, essentially, just moving on to a happier species.
Well, the only way that I'm coping is by looking on the funny side, Andy, on the bright side of things. It is very funny to me that the Republicans' whole pitch is basically constantly asserting that the Democrats have the power to rig elections, that there's a deep state that's in control of everything, that the Hollywood elite are drinking children. They have the power to control your life and prevent the Republicans from winning, and that's why it's important to get out and vote. And also, if the Republicans win, ignore all that stuff we spent months or years saying about the validity of the election. Like this, it's amazing.
Nish, how's your election campaign gone?
My election campaign has gone fantastically, Andrew. And I'm basically, at this point, all of our objective is to not pull a Tony Hinchcliffe. Every comedian now, we've all had bad gigs. Some of us have had gigs so bad they've ended up in the news. But none of us have had a gig so bad we might potentially alter the trajectory of a presidential race. And the only objective here is to not do what Tony Hinchcliffe, aka Kill Tony, did when he opened for Donald Trump at what appears to be an Adolf Hitler tribute concert that he staged at Madison Square Gardens. It was very strange. It was like watching the bootleg Beatles or something. Like it was a very strange event. And Tony Hinchcliffe told a joke that is so racist about Puerto Ricans that it may well have a direct impact on the presidential race. I mean, elsewhere, I will say that aside from all the other very, very sort of important conversations and issues that we've had here, it is really important to stress that Donald Trump at the most recent bout of rallies has looked fully dead. He has looked simply dead as like, I don't know.
Putting the Brezhnev card.
It genuinely looks like Lenin is running for Russian president now. And again, we should separate all of these out. There are very serious issues at play. But at several of Trump's rallies that I've seen video footage of in the last couple of days, he has looked like me when I did what I would describe as ill-advised stand-up comedy gig 25 minutes after getting out of the airport when I landed in New Zealand. I was so jet lagged that my brain could not make memories. I was forgetting the words I was saying as I was saying them. I sort of jet lagged myself into having the Memento Man's disease. It was incredible. I was barely capable of understanding what I was saying as it was coming out of my mouth. Now, I will say, did the gigs go fine? Of course they did. I'm an incredibly competent stand-up comedian. And I will say competent is about as good as it gets. Tickets available at nishkumar.co.uk for my tour. But what I will say is what I wouldn't have done in that position is give me the codes to the most powerful nuclear arsenal assembled in the history of mankind. He looks deeply and profoundly unwell. He at one point last week, he just started riffing on Hannibal Lecter. He's consistently just talked about Hannibal Lecter repeatedly, to the extent that it is starting to be concerning that he thinks Hannibal Lecter is a real guy.
Well, he's done this quite often now, hasn't he? And Lecter seems to be some sort of spiritual touchstone. I don't know if he's like a hero, a role model. I don't know.
Well, they didn't do anyone any favors by casting Mads Mikkelsen in the reboot, did they? Because now everyone has weird sexual feelings about Hannibal Lecter. To be fair, I think Trump probably had weird sexual feelings about the original Hannibal Lecter. But again, handsome actors can turn anyone's head. Regarding Tony Hinchcliffe, I was so glad that I'm not doing the last post anymore, because if you will recall correctly, there were occasional moments where it felt like the made-up universe that I had created was piercing through to the boundaries of reality. And when he started saying there was a floating trash island in the ocean, I was like, is it Bob the sentient trash island who's running for president in the last post universe?
I think we'd all take that now, Alice. To be, we would all happily welcome Bob, the sentient trash island, back from the fictitious past into the real present. I mean, all the rabbits Trump has pulled out of the campaigning hat, the rotten, festering corpses of rabbits out of his putrid hat. I mean, he's racism, sexism, big time bullshit. I mean, he described Puerto Rico, well, like I said, this floating island of garbage. He said Liz Cheney should have guns pointing at her face. He jokingly, of course, about journalists being shot. I mean, personally, I know humour is innately subjective, but I didn't find it laugh out loud funny. But then comedy of awkwardness is not really my thing. He talked about the enemy within, and whether or not you think he was attempting to directly quote Adolf Hitler, it was certainly the kind of language that you might use if, for example, you were scripting a TV drama about Hitler and you wanted Hitler to sound just like Adolf Hitler. He claimed God was on his side. This is a weird thing. Claiming God was on his... Now, I know we all tend to drift a bit right as we get older, and God has had some pretty wonky political and social views over the years, but even so, that seems like a bit of a leap for God to support a man who quite literally shits on all 10 of his commandments on a daily basis.
I just think the only acceptable time to call someone the enemy within is when you're pregnant and they're kicking your bladder.
I will say that at certain times in my life where I've experienced, shall we call it, colonic discomfort, I have repeatedly referred to the enemy within and have screamed, "The power of Christ compels you," at my own stomach.
Get thee behind me, Satan.
He also used this phrase, "hydrogen is the new car," which, I mean... That will take so much explanation on so many levels.
Humanity.
That was the working title of Orange is the New Black.
He also pretended to give a blowjob to a microphone. I mean, is that really appealing to the undecided voters? I don't know. Maybe that is what people are just waiting for in America. Those quite how you can be undecided about Donald Trump in the year 2024. I have no fucking idea, but maybe, just maybe, there are key voters in key swing states who are just waiting for one or other candidate to give a pretend blowjob to a pretend microphone, and that could be what swings it for Trump. By contrast, Kamala Harris is pitching for unity, hope, and progress. I mean, I don't know who the hell she's trying to convince with that shit. Those are things that traditionally vast swathes of the American electorate are at best skeptical about. They're a bit woke, maybe even a bit French. So I'm not sure she's going down the right road with that. There was an article on Vox with the headline, "Is America collapsing like ancient Rome?" And as someone who studied ancient Rome to a degree, I mean, literally a university degree, but I mean to a pretty small degree of that degree. Let's give ancient Rome some credit. It took them hundreds of years to collapse like America is doing in the space of about a decade and a half. So,
If America